Hi, I'm Dr. Jim Hoven, your host of the Difference Makers podcast. This is a place where people come together that are making a difference for those who want to make a difference. And that's you. We're bringing thought leaders together in a sense of fusion where ideas and concepts and personalities are all driven together into one place at one time. And this is no different. In this episode, you're going to see cool things from cool people making a difference. Hello, Difference Makers. Welcome back. It's another episode of the Ramos Law Difference Makers podcast where I, your host, Dr. Jim Hoven, get a chance to meet cool people doing cool things. And today I have a tandem of cool people, one I get to work with every day and one who helped me in a crazy situation to understand what was the right decision for me with my vehicle. And we'll get more into that later, but this is episode 219. I can't believe that it's gone that far, that fast. We've had some great results. And this episode actually was something that someone had really put into my mind by questions they were asking me. So this is going to be an episode that's going to connect the dots for you as the watcher or the listener when it comes to saying, if my car's been in a wreck and it gets fixed, why is it that if I take it to one place, the insurance company says, oh, it's worth this much, but we're not going to pay that. We'll pay this at another insurance company. What is that all about? How does it work? We're going to kind of demystify that, and we're going to lift the curtain and show you what goes on behind the scenes, because who I have with me is Matt Osborne, who's our consumer protection attorney, and he has to focus on these issues quite often. And when I say has to, it means that unfortunately, insurance companies are sometimes not doing the right thing. So his job is to make sure they end up doing the right thing. And then who I have as my guest too is the owner of Golden Coachworks. Her name is Jana Miller. And Jana, again, special person in my life with respect to my cars because of a story that we'll get into another time. So Jana is the person that would be working then on the cars and understands the backside of what happens when you're trying to fix a car. So without further ado, I want to jump into this. So first of all, Jana, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about your shop. We're going to talk about what you see. And we're going to put it in context with what Matt Osborne sees over here. And I know we were talking off camera and talking about literally this stuff is happening almost on a regular basis. Today, this kind of thing happens. So as we intro this, I'm now going to swing over to Matt and say, Matt, thanks for joining me. I know your schedule's busy. Look forward to this topic for sure.
Yeah. No, we get lots of complaints about this. I was just saying, literally 5 minutes ago, we got a call from somebody that an insurance company had told them to take it to a preferred body shop. They didn't fix the frame. They gave the car back with unrepaired frame damage, misaligned panels and stuff. Things are falling off the car. And the insurance company told her basically go take a hike. So now they've come to find me. So
and Jana, is this something that you've seen as a body shop owner where work that gets done either because the other shop is so busy or something, that is this a common thing that happens?
It may not be common, but it definitely happens, and the whole preferred shop is just the insurance company getting kickbacks. So, they're trying to steer people to those shops because they get the bigger kickbacks. And I've never become a direct repair facility because I won't sacrifice my quality for quantity.
And what happens? So give an example of when you've seen this in the past. So a car has been in an accident. It gets fixed, quotation marks.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, does the person see something, feel something, notice something, and then they go, I this isn't right. Maybe they go back to the other shop and they say, no, that's all we can do. Or they end up in your shop. How do they get to you?
Usually it's they've gone back to the shop several times. Either it's a noticeable difference or they feel something. I mean, everybody knows how their own vehicles drive. And so once they get in their vehicle, drive it down the road, they notice something's not right, or the gaps are off, and things just, maybe it's dog tracking or sideways or, pulling one way or another. And they go back to the shops, and the shops really just kind of just shove them away. And so they've brought them to my shop in order to re-inspect things. And I've seen some pretty scary stuff underneath.
Yeah, and that could be unsafe, right?
Very much so, yeah.
And so what do you do in that case? Typically, you get that, you examine it, then do you have to try to go back to the insurance carrier, or they say, hey, case closed, too bad, so sad, it's on you? Like, what happens?
Usually the insurance company will take care of it, especially if, you say something like, the insurance commissioner of the state of Colorado, or, you say things like that. A lot of times I've experienced the insurance company will take care of it and go after the direct repair facility or drop them, if the case is so severe.
And Matt, what have you seen on your side when the insurance company wants to, we'll say, cut corners or use this kind of repair shop, and then it's not fixed right. When it goes south, people call you. What does that look like?
Well, a lot of times, at least on my end, the way that people discover it is we've had multiple cases where people have gone through this process, and then say 6 or 8 months later, they didn't know there was a problem with the car, and they'll get backed into at a parking lot in King Soopers. It'll just be a little like nick. They'll take it to a new body shop, and they'll look at it and say, oh my God, we can't believe somebody's actually driving this car. There's frame damage. This thing is a death trap. I mean, we've had cases where bolts weren't even put back on, structural components. And then people call me because the insurance company, just, at least in my experience, has not really been willing to help. And yeah, like Jana was saying, they do have the ability to make the direct repair shop fix it under their contract because it's supposed to be warranted. But sort of the interesting piece of that is a lot of times it's the insurance company writing the estimate that has a lower scope. It doesn't encompass all the things that need to be fixed, which is one of the reasons they'll send it there. I mean, I see a lot of cases where an independent shop will write an estimate for, let's say, $30,000, and the insurance company will say, well, if you take it to our shop, they can do it for $8,000. And then that estimate will not have a lot of things that need to be done as far as structural work. So they'll just kind of perform cosmetic repairs, give it back to the person and say, oh yeah, it's good. And if you're not an expert like Jana, a lot of people, I mean, I probably couldn't even tell, you get it back, it's all nice and shiny. If you don't know what to look for, you're not going to really know.
Right.
Unless, if it's doing something like dog tracking or pulling or something. But a lot of people don't know. And then they're just driving these death traps around for months or years until there's a later event where they figure it out.
And so from a legal perspective, is there a statute of limitations on this, Matt, where if someone doesn't know for, let's say, 2 years, and then they get backed into a parking lot or something, and all of a sudden they look under, that they can tie back to that event? Or is there a time passes where, you know what, it's too late for you to make a second claim and get another bite at that apple?
Well, there is a statute of limitations, but it normally starts running when you discover it or reasonably should have discovered it. So, I mean, we've actually had cases where people discovered it 6 years later and they drove it for 6 years, and they just got lucky that they never got into a crash.
Yeah.
Or we see cases where people do get into a crash and the damages are much more severe than what they should have been, and then we trace it back and figure out because some other insurance body shop didn't fix it right.
And Jana, when you are working on a car, if you see something that is like, this doesn't look right, you're doing one of these expert evals, do you have the ability right then to just fix it? You just got to get authorization from the person, or do you have to go back to carrier? You'd mentioned earlier that sometimes the carrier will, let you fix it. Is that the process that you have to go through when you see something like that?
Yeah, usually what I do is I send in a supplement, which is a pretty standard process across the body industry. And so at that point, I take over the claim. I send in a supplement, write all the documentation that I've got, rewrite the estimate, even if it's already on there. They pay me for that and typically go after the original body shop for their reimbursement from them, because at that point they've overpaid.
Yeah.
Right. Or paid for the same job twice.
Right.
But at least at the second time, they've got documentation on this other shop, and that's like a permanent record.
Oh, wow. Okay. So talk to me now about the risks of driving with certain kinds of things left undone. And obviously it can range, the inside of my bumper's cracked instead of the outside, versus some, like Matt was saying, bolts not even put in. From your experience, what you've seen, share with us, like, what can happen if a car's not repaired correctly?
Well, especially if the frame is still damaged, you've got crush zones that are supposed to route the energy away from the passengers inside the vehicle when you get in an accident. And if one of those crush zones, see if I can talk today, have already been compromised, it'll crush twice as hard. And so whereas it wouldn't hurt the passengers from the initial wreck if they didn't fix it right the first time, second wreck could injure them severely. As far as the outer body panels, that's more of like a visual thing is not
cosmetic kinda.
Yeah, cosmetic more or less. Yeah, but structural is really what's the important thing to fix.
So would there be, besides the frame, are there other parts of the structure that would come into question as far as their integrity?
Yeah, so you have ultra high strength steel, where your whole car comes together right where your feet go in the front. So it's called you've got your firewall, you've got the floor, you've got the roof, and everything connects right there. And that's like the front of your torque box, and that's one of the most structural parts of any vehicle, besides the frame.
Okay, so then if a car is damaged, what happens to that particular piece then? Does it twist, or does it kind of mold in a different way?
At that point, it's a structural total, and it should not be repaired.
Oh, so if that thing gets damaged...
If that gets damaged, your car should go to the junkyard.
Okay. And then, so off of that comes then frame damage.
Yeah.
And if the frame is twisted, is there a certain amount of untwisting that you can do to a frame? Or is frame damage similar to like, ooh, this gets sketchy?
It just depends on where it's damaged in the frame. Like say on a truck, it's damaged in the rear. You really don't have a whole lot that you can't fix. Mm-hmm. So you can fix a lot of stuff in the rear end hits. You've got a lot less back there. Plus, it's the furthest thing from the passengers. Mm-hmm. In the front, it just depends on where the frame is bent.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about a T-bone? Does that change? Because we've talked about if you run into someone, the front's really exposed potentially. If you get hit in the back, you've got more play. What about if you get hit from the side?
It just depends on how severe, how fast where the car's going. 30 mile an hour hit is an easy fix. 60 mile an hour hit, you may survive.
Right. And Matt, when you've seen this now let's take it back to what you've seen with these frame issues. Have you ever seen, what was the first part called at the front? What's that called?
It's called a torque box.
The torque box.
It's the front part of the torque box.
Have you ever seen a torque box thing, or those are pretty well discovered and then those cars are off the road?
Well, yeah, from what I've seen, the word frame can be a little bit ambiguous because it can mean different things in different cars. Sort of the old school meaning is just the actual frame rails themselves, but most modern cars are what's called a unibody, which means the whole car is basically welded, and that's the structure. And any of those pieces can be a structural component. So what I've seen a lot of times is if those things get damaged, it's a safety issue, and oftentimes it would need to be totaled out to fix it right. And so I'll see insurance companies, they don't want to total it out because then they have to apply for a salvage title. They got to take it to Copart. So what I've seen is I've seen them play games with the estimates to sort of leave that out or pretend like they didn't see it so they don't have to total it. Because most insurance companies have a threshold of, say, 75% damage. So if it's more than 75% damage, you got to total it out.
And is that of the value of the car at that date, or it's 75% of what?
Yeah, it's basically of the value of the date versus the repairs that need to be done. So you can adjust the value or the repairs. You can play games with both of those to get within the percentage.
And if you're at 70, we're going to try to fix it.
Yeah, especially if you leave out like fixing the structure and you just do cosmetic repairs and you can get it to 50 or 70. Yeah. And you can say, oh, well, we didn't have to apply for a salvage title because we couldn't see it. And then they play games where they'll say, well, we know it's damaged, but we can't see it until we disassemble it. But you can tell based on the hit and the way that the crash happened that there's definitely damage when you disassemble it. But they write the estimate without doing that. And then they'll say, well, it's not fraud because we didn't see it. And you can't make us see it, even though we know it's there. So that's like the game that they play.
Wow. And so now if we're talking about disassembling a frame, is that something that you guys would look at doing if you're doing this initial assessment? Then we say, yeah, there's something here, but we got to go deeper. You would then, to use this language, disassemble to fix it or evaluate it?
It would go up on the frame rack and get measured. So we've got a laser measuring system, and so it basically tells you the specs that the car should have and how far out of spec it is. And there's a tolerance that it can be repaired and a tolerance that it can't.
Just like what he's talking about, the 75% to total, but this is a microcosm of that.
Yeah, so I think we're talking about two different things here. We're talking about like measuring a frame versus like totaling a vehicle.
Yes.
There's a lot of times that we do fix frames, and it doesn't hinder the structural integrity of a vehicle, as long as it's within specs. We had talked about on your personal vehicle that it was a structural total and that it would never be the same.
Right.
And so, they do total them out at 75% of the value of the vehicle because they're guessing with any additional parts you might find, you're going to go up to that 1,000 or that 100% mark. But so how you write an estimate is, I try to get everything that I can, and I've been doing body work for 20 years. And so I try to write for the things that I can't see as well. And the insurance companies come at you and they take your estimate, throw it in the trash can and come back with something that's like a tenth of the cost.
Right.
And then they want you to measure a frame and disassemble the whole vehicle in order to get the full spec.
So, and that's what I think when Matt was talking about earlier, like if you gave them a $30,000 estimate and they said, we're going to do 8, they take it and throw it in the trash. And then they say, yeah, we don't need to do all that.
Yeah. They're also hoping that people take the money and run, because there's a good portion of people in the United States that do take the money and run. And in the end of the year, it saves them millions of dollars, even though they're liable to pay for the entire collision.
Yeah.
It's a very underhanded game.
That's a great point. So Matt, if someone were to do that, obviously they've given up their, we'll call it legal rights. If they chose to, like hail damage, right? A car gets hail damage. They say, oh yeah, I'll take my $4,000 in hail damage repair, but they don't get it repaired. Now it's on you. If someone were to do that, they don't know the damage. They don't know the true ramifications of the danger that they're in. But they take the money and run. That's their problem. Is that how it works? They're now, the insurance company said, hey, we did our part. You don't have to fix the car. There's no follow-up. Is that a consumer beware, buyer beware situation?
Yeah, that's not something I've seen a ton of, but I think it would just really depend on the facts. It's hard to give a definite answer either way on that. But I think what I see more commonly is kind of what she was describing, and then the insurance company, they'll write an estimate for 8, and then they'll kind of call the customer behind the body shop's back, and they'll say, hey, your body shop charging you $30,000, you're going to be out of pocket if you keep doing business with them. Why don't you take it down to our Good Hands Repair Network shop? They'll be more than happy to do it for 8. And then it's well understood, like to become part of the network, you basically have to agree to abide by the insurance company's estimate. And then, yeah, they will, the direct shops, they will do a few supplements for minor things here and there, but you can't fix the car within that $8,000 that you're given. So they have to take shortcuts. So, we've seen cases of just like, frames still bent and twisted, not even addressed. We've seen Bondo just coming through holes. Just like things blatantly misaligned.
Right.
And they just put people back on the road and say, well, have a nice day.
Wow, that's scary to me.
It is scary, but it's like anybody, it's a 10-hour job. You tell somebody we're only going to pay you 4. Can they do it in 4? Yeah, but it's not going to be right.
Yeah.
And so that's where they're sacrificing their quality for quantity, and that's why I just won't become a direct repair facility. I've gone rounds with insurance adjusters like, no, you're going to pay me what I need to fix this because I'm going to fix it right. And I offer a lifetime warranty through my shop, whereas a lot of the big conglomerates are banking on the fact you're going to trade out your car in 5 years.
Oh, that makes sense. And that way, by the time things really start going south, you're getting a new car anyways.
You're getting a new car, yeah. And so that's what they're banking on.
Wow. And so this has been a really challenging issue from both sides. Like I'm hearing from what you guys are seeing, there's I can't imagine saying this is what the car needs and then them saying, nah, we're going to give you this. Like, since when are you the expert? You're not the expert.
Yeah. I told a guy to come over and pull a frame. Like, then you pull the frame.
How was that response?
Well, I don't really know how to. Okay, well, then stop telling me how to do my job.
Right? Exactly. And so from that perspective, the reason that this conversation is so important is, with what we do here, it's all about taking care of people who have been in a car accident. We have other verticals too, but what we're talking about right now is people who've been in a crash, but we're so focused on taking care of their bodies, making sure they get the care they need, making sure that they can get their lives back. But their car is critical because if their car isn't working right, they don't have their life truly back. Like I drive 40 miles one way to work every single day. And so I put a lot of miles on my car. I need that thing to work right. I need it to be right. And if I'm without it, it's not good for me. And so just like we're helping people get their health back, you guys and what you do is all about making sure that they're getting their life back from that side. Right.
And you're probably driving highway miles. Like I said earlier, you get in a 30-mile-an-hour crash, you're fine. It's a fender bender. You get in a crash going 60, 70, that car better be in, pre-accident condition, better be up to structural integrity that came off the manufacturer's floor. And that's the body shop's responsibility. And it's the insurance company's responsibility to pay adequately for adequate repairs. And that's another thing that we struggle with.
What about aftermarket stuff? Like, and here's why I asked that. When you mentioned the 30 mile an hour, the 30 mile an hour crash being okay from a medical side, man, people can get G-force injuries from 5 miles an hour or less because of how their head was turned and if they have previous injuries and all these other things. And so 30 to me, like literally, I've heard you say that number twice, and I'm like, wow, because I'm used to the body damage, the human damage that can occur at low speed, low impact. Because I treated many of them for a long, long time. And so now hearing 30, boy, I would think it would be like, wow. So hearing you makes me feel better on one side, like, hey, the car can be okay. But on the other side, what if they put crap parts back on a 30 mile an hour crash, aftermarket parts?
So aftermarket, how it works is, so say the manufacturer stamps a bumper 100,000 times. Then they take that mold, that stamp, and they sell it to an aftermarket parts company. And every time, you stamp something, the stamp wears out a little bit. So parts, that's why they're misaligned or misfit, or they're a little too big for the car, and so they don't fit properly, but it's still the same part in the end. Maybe it's a little bit thinner metal, but again, it's like cosmetics, like a fender is cosmetics. There's really, it's the structure behind it that's saving you inside the car. Nobody wants their car to look bad, but, aftermarket hoods, aftermarket fenders, it's a little bit thinner metal, but anymore, the manufacturers are going with thinner metals anyway.
Are there aftermarket parts that are dangerous that would go underneath that are not cosmetic that would cause a problem?
No, it's mostly just trunks, hoods, fenders. There's some people that want to do these fiberglass cars to make their vehicles lighter and go racing, but that's, they're signing off their own life on that, because we won't do that there. Some other places may do it, or they may do it on their own, but that's when you get into the dicey neighborhood, is when you start replacing like roofs and stuff like that with fiberglass panels or carbon fiber panels. But most reputable shops won't even touch that.
Okay. Are those things insurable if they do that? Does that fall under, because we're talking about what happens on fixing stuff. If they do that, is there insurance on fixing that car change? Is it like void the warranty, so to speak?
It probably does, and if they wreck it, they're probably racing anyway, so they might not be able to get insured. So
yeah. And Matt, when you're talking to an insurance company, making them aware of what has happened, you say, hey, fill in the blank insurance company name. We just got this person. We saw this. We saw that. How do they respond to that? Do they just say, oh, we didn't see it, like you were talking about earlier? Oh, yeah. We didn't see it, and then they try to get themselves off the hook, or what do they say?
Well, they'll try to play a number of games. What I've seen is most of the people for the insurance that write the estimates are iCar certified, so they do know some things, but they don't actually fix the cars, and they probably never have in their life. So they kind of know enough to be dangerous, but not really know what they're talking about. But they'll usually try to justify their position and say that the body shop was exaggerating the work that needed to be done. You don't really have to do it that way. So a lot of times we have the body shop pull the manufacturer's repair instructions. And I've been in depositions with insurance adjusters where I'm saying, this is how Subaru says it has to be done. What's your basis to say it doesn't have to be done this way? Because when manufacturers crash test these vehicles before putting them on the market, they don't do it with frame damaged vehicles, and they don't do it with things that are missing, bolts missing and stuff. So it's assumed to be in a certain condition. But usually if you can prove that the manufacturer requires it, they'll eventually cave. But yeah, on a related note, they do play games with the fraud stuff where they just say like, well, we didn't see it. And it's like, but it's right there. How could you not see it? Well, we didn't see it.
And so at the end of the day, when these things when this all starts coming together, you've shown that something should have been done different than what was done, that it was not done to the perspective or the context or the standard that it should have been done. At that point, is there a penalty to them besides having to fix the car? Like, we'll call it in our world, what would be called maybe pain and suffering, but not, you know what I mean? Like some sort of punitive damages or something?
Yeah, there could be. A lot of cases that I see when it goes back to the body shop for what's called the post-repair inspection, it'll be so bad that the body shop will say this thing literally needs to be totaled out at this point. And we've had the insurance companies agree and say, yeah, we're just going to total it. So then at that point, the issue is, did the insurance company act in bad faith? And if
Can you define bad faith for people that may not know what that means?
Well, it can mean a lot of different things, but it's basically like not doing a reasonable investigation into the claim, intentionally lowballing the claim, or conveniently leaving out important things in the claim, or just not treating your insured fairly, not timely communicating. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but it has to be something other than just carelessness. But you have to show, intentional bad faith conduct. And if you can show that, then there is enhanced penalties. You can get double damages, punitive damages, emotional distress. So, I mean, I've personally had some of these cases settle for hundreds of thousands of dollars.
On how much damage of a car? Like, what would be the repair damage?
$10,000.
Wow.
In dispute.
Wow. So because they didn't do the right thing, and because of the issues that it caused and the potential issues, and them operating what we'll call in bad faith, or covering it up, or not communicating, however that defines out, it has been worth multiple of the 10 to 50 times of the damage. Isn't that do the insurance companies look at that as a guard dog to say, hey, we get dinged for these, and so we don't want to do that? Or is the likelihood of someone finding someone like you going through that process so low that, hey, that's kind of, we'll take that risk because it doesn't happen comparatively to the money we're saving by not paying to get the thing fixed right the first time?
Yeah, well, if they're doing it to millions of people or even thousands of people, and only one of them or two of them find me, they still make money in the long run. So I don't think they would only stop doing it if everybody started fighting for their rights and challenging them. Then they would probably change their behavior. But the reality is there's just not enough attorneys like me that do these cases, and a lot of people never find out. A lot of people will drive this thing for 5 years and trade it in,
like we were talking about earlier.
And then that's a whole nother fraud we could get into, but then it'll go through a 151-point inspection and the dealer won't see it, and it'll get sold to a consumer, and then they'll discover it a few months or years later.
Wow.
And be like, what the heck?
Wow. And so let's just go down that road a little bit. So now the car gets traded in, goes to a dealer, the used car dealer sees it but doesn't see it, it gets sold. Does the liability then fall on both the dealer and the original insurance company at that point?
Yeah, we've actually done multiple trials. We actually just had one a few months ago against one of the biggest dealerships in the country and one of the biggest insurance companies in the country, which we won against both of them on those exact facts, where basically the dealership had a loaner car. It was wrecked when one of their customers had it. They took it, they didn't bring it to their own body shop. They took it to this shady body shop that was controlled by one of the insurance companies. And they tried to pound out the structural damage with a hammer instead of actually fixing it. And then it went through a 151-point inspection by an ASC certified technician who allegedly didn't see it. And it was sold to an 18-year-old kid, which conveniently the accident wasn't on the Carfax. So they said, oh, look, it's a great car, never been in a wreck. Here's a Carfax to prove it, which they knew was false. So yeah, this kind of stuff goes on all the time.
Wow. And Jen, I want to give you the final word on this, because I think we've set the stage of this. If you're dealing with a car that you don't know, it's buyer beware, you better get it checked out. If you're dealing with your own car that's been wrecked, you got to make sure it's fixed right. Do you have any advice that you could share with our audience that would say after a crash, like what you said that just warmed my heart? You said, yeah, we have a lifetime warranty on our work. Yeah, someone doesn't come to you, right? And they go, so now they don't know you yet. They haven't been able to work with you, and their car was in a wreck and it got fixed. Do you have any advice to them? Like, is it just trust but verify? Is it hope for the best? Like, what would you tell someone that got their car repaired?
I mean, I suppose it depends on the severity. If you've got, your car and it's just like a fender bender, most of that is cosmetic, and, it's a visual thing. You saw it was damaged, a fender, a hood, a headlight, something like that, and you could probably trust that it's been repaired adequately. But, if you've got some frame damage, stuff like that, and you don't entirely trust the shop that you went to because they're not being forthcoming, they've been shady the whole time, it's all about feeling. And I think that a lot of people do go with that. I've had a lot of people come into my shop say, your estimate's a little bit higher, but I feel better here. It's like all these other shops, they just want to push you aside. You're just a number. They don't really care about you, and if you have a feeling about that, you should get it re-inspected, and where I would suggest to start is a quick alignment. If you take it to a mechanic shop and it's misaligned right after you pick it up, then you might want to further investigate.
That's a good point.
And that's a lot cheaper than, having your frame diagnosed or frame looked at.
Yeah. And what about if someone is looking to just kind of get an overall sense of their car and they're taking it into a shop on the front side? So the insurance company says you should go here, right? And they say, and they go, oh, I don't get a good feeling of that. Is there...
It's illegal in the state of Colorado to tell people where they have to take it. They give these strong suggestions, like you said, they can do it for this price. Everyone else is trying to rip you off, blah, blah, blah. They say all these things to your car won't be warranted if you take it there, but it all depends on the shop and the shop's warranty. The insurance company really has no warranty. They wash their hands of it. If something happens, they're like, well, you need to go back to the shop. They really don't care about it. So it all depends on the shop anyway. In the state of Colorado, you're allowed to choose wherever you want to go. And reviews are the world. Look at the reviews that a shop has. If you get a bad feeling, don't go there. Look for another shop.
I love that, because in the healthcare world, I would always tell patients, hey, I want you, if you're coming in here, ask me the questions, bring someone with you. I want you to understand what I would do for you to treat you. Like, I want it to, like you say, feel right. And if not, go get a second opinion. I would tell my patients going to see other types of doctors, do the same thing. And what you're talking about is that same concept of ask questions. If you're not getting the answers you want, don't feel like you just have to take it there. Like, go get other resources.
Yeah. I mean, everything's social media these days. So every shop that you're going to take it to that's somewhat reputable has a Google listing, and Google reviews, will tell you just about everything you need to know about how a shop runs.
So one last question I got to ask you. When you get a bad Google review as a shop, all businesses, no matter how good they are, or somehow, some way, sometimes someone's going to be upset. Either they thought you charged too much, or they didn't think this was, or they waited too long, or yada, yada, yada. What do you guys do in that situation from a business perspective now?
I respond to every single review we get, good and bad, personally. So, and if it's a bad review, usually there's another story behind it that they're just not saying. And so I like to clear the air and be very transparent about the situation that happened.
I love that. You guys, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for the time. Just for the people that are watching, if they have questions, Matt, how would people get a hold of you if they feel like, man, I've been in an accident, my car doesn't seem like it's going right. I know you work in these cases all over the place, all over the country with different kinds of people and this and that. How would they get a hold of you to learn more?
Well, they can call us, they can email us, text us. There's a number of different ways.
You can go to our website, ramoslaw.com. Right. You can also 303-733-6353 is our direct number, and then you would ask for Matt that way. Any other direct ways, or is that good for you? Does that work?
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
You're easy, Matt. We love you.
Try.
And Jana, what about you? If someone has questions and wants to learn more about how a car gets fixed, is my car fixed, can I come check you out, how would they reach out to you?
Phone's great, 303-279-9777.
Awesome. So you guys, thank you again. For me, this was I learned a lot. And we always want people to be safe on the road. We always want and that starts with vehicle safety. If you're running on bad tires, you're probably not safe, right?
That's
and so
right.
It starts from there and works its way up. But knowing that we have someone, Matt, like you, that's protecting the public and making sure that people are just doing the right thing when they're covering for this, that's great. And Jana, that you're doing it the right way. I can't wait for us. And for those of you watching, listening, Jana and I are going to do actually another episode where we're going to talk about some cool things. And so you're going to want to tune in for that. It's going to be coming up later. You'll see it. You'll hear about it. Our team will let you know. But you guys, this has been great. Thank you so much. And can't wait to do more of these with you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
All right. So until next time, you guys, hopefully this brought you incredible value. Please do all the things that I ask you every single time, would you subscribe? Would you pass this along? Give us a 5-star review, and actually share this with someone. Someone needs to know this information, and so share it with them. And until the next time we get to be together, keep making a difference.